So now see, interest is a common between RBI's monetary policy and government's fiscal policy. We are going to discuss now the negative side of market borrowing. The positive is when government goes for market borrowing, money supply is going to remain the same. But if government goes for borrowing from the RBI, money supply will increase. Okay. See, already in Indian market, interest is very high. In the recent times, we can see the rate of interest in the Indian market has come down. RBI has cut the repo rate so many times. So now rate of interest in India is very low as compared to what it used to be. But still, we can say domestic capital is very costly. If we compare domestic capital with the global capital, I have discussed this thing earlier, global capital, not only they are sufficiently available, but they are very, very cheap. Yes, why rate of interest in the Indian market is coming down? Because to promote growth. For growth, who is responsible for the growth? So definitely the producers. So in order to promote the growth, one of the precondition is availability of cheap and sufficient capital. Capital, not only it should be sufficiently available, but also it should be cheaper. And as a result, rate of interest in the Indian market has come down. But I said still very, very high. Still very, very high. Okay. Now, interest is basically cost of capital or simply price of capital. It is also known to be debt service charge. We have to bear the cost of using capital of someone else. So why in Indian market rate of interest is very high? So it's all about demand and supply. You always apply the basic rule of demand and supply. Supply remaining the same, and if demand is increasing, what will happen to the price? The price is going to increase. After 91, when India went for reform, suddenly we have seen many changes. More and more producers, they are coming to the market. More and more institutions, they have started operating. Yes, their magnitude and the numbers, it is also going to increase. So demand for domestic capital has increased manifold. Demand for domestic capital is coming from every corner of the economy. You can see new companies are being set up. So they are issuing shares. So what they are doing basically, they are looking for domestic capital. Yes, they are issuing debentures. So what they are doing, they are also looking for debt, means domestic capital. Yes, mutual funds, they are issuing their units. So what they are looking for, they are going for demanding domestic capital. So domestic capital, it is increasing. Demand for domestic capital is increasing. It is very high nowadays. Yes, SME, MSME, so they have grown in numbers. So demand for domestic capital in Indian market, it is very, very high. Very, very high. But supply of domestic capital, it is very low. Very low because there is some supply side constraint because it is being managed by the RBI. Yes, there are certain criteria before RBI can print the notes because money alone can be very, very constructive as well as destructive. So in India, the scenario is that domestic capital's demand is very high, but supply is less. As a result, price of capital means rate of interest is high. Okay. So domestic capital, this question came 3 years ago. In an economy, if the supply of capital is less or constant, and if demand is increasing, so what will happen? The answer will be rate of interest in the domestic market is going to be high. So already in the domestic market, rate of interest is very, very high. And in that situation, government decides to go for market borrowing. So when government goes for market borrowing, bonds and bills, they are being issued by the government. So when government goes for market borrowing, now this time demand for domestic capital is coming from government side. And when government goes for market borrowing, it means demand for domestic capital will be coming from government side, which is going to be very, very high. See, this year's budget, initial target to go for market borrowing worth approximately 8 lakh crore. Now it is going to cross 12 lakh crore as per the last report. So this much of domestic capital demand is coming from government side. And when government goes for market borrowing, demand pressure will be very, very high. Demand for domestic capital will suddenly increase, leading to high rate of interest. Interest is going to be high, isn't it? And when interest is going to be high, interest is an integral part of cost of production, then rate of interest in the domestic market is definitely going to increase. Now, it means domestic capital, it is going to be very, very costly. It has its own adverse impact, because what about the private investors? Private investors, when rate of interest in the market is increasing, it's not good for the private investors, because it is going to discourage private investment. And yes, there are a number of private investors, they will be simply not basically going to respond. So they will be thrown out of the market, because for them, they cannot bear such a high rate of interest. And yes, it is said to be crowding out effect. Known to be crowding out effect. It's a very commonly used in public finance. See, what is the meaning of the word crowd effect? Whenever government goes for market borrowing, it means demand for domestic capital is there from government side, and that demand, the magnitude of that demand will be very, very high. So demand pressure will be applied. Basic rule of demand supply. Supply of capital is same, and demand for domestic capital is increasing from government side, so leading to high rate of interest. And interest is an integral part of cost of production. So cost of production will increase, leading to cost push inflation. Moreover, in the domestic market, capital will become costly. Whenever government goes for market borrowing, it means rate of interest in the domestic market will be very, very high. It will simply discourage the private investors, because private investors, they need capital, and that too at a cheaper rate. And when the rate of interest in the Indian market is high, it will definitely adversely affect the volume of investment coming from the private investors. And yes, this is called, they will be totally eliminated from the market. It is known to be crowding out effect. So now you got the negative side of the market borrowing. So inflation will be there, whether government goes for borrowing from the RBI or borrowing from the market. Only the nature of inflation will depend. When government goes for market borrowing, you will have demand pull inflation. When government goes for borrowing from the market, in that case, you will have cost push inflation. Now, some people believe that this cost push inflation is more dangerous than demand pull inflation. Now, with respect to Indian economy, you have to see. So, what we can see, inflation in India is because of both. Features of demand pull inflation as well as cost push inflation there. It's not that only one inflation there. Now, other factors are also there. Because of that, inflationary pressure you can see time to time. So now I am going to conclude two things we have discussed. Borrowing from the RBI, and second, borrowing from the market. So which one is better? Which one is better? So now you cannot say anything. No one. Correct answer is no one. Whether you borrow from RBI, when government borrows from the RBI, then money supply will increase. It will lead to demand pull inflation. And if government goes for market borrowing, which is the current policy of the government, then in the domestic market, domestic capital will be costly, rate of interest will be high, leading to cost push inflation. And moreover, except for the government, it is going to hurt other investors as well. And yes, crowding out effect is going to take place. So two things we have discussed: borrowing from the RBI, which is no more, maybe possible again, it is coming back. And second, borrowing from the market. Now come to borrowing from RBI, जो हमने discuss किया some time ago. Now under borrowing from market, I discussed कि RBI, Government of India, is issuing its treasury bill to whom? RBI, and ad hoc treasury bill, and RBI was printing the notes against that treasury bill, leading to money supply. But if it is going to come back again, if the same policy is going to be followed, chances are there by the government again, because government needs money. But in this case, chances are there that in some different manner, deficit financing will be done. Deficit of the government will be monetized by the same process, printing of notes by the RBI, but in a different manner. See, what is the most likely? In this case, nowadays, what government will do, the process will be a little bit different from the previous method of deficit financing. Here, what the government will do, this time government will issue bonds to the RBI. Bonds to the RBI, you know meaning of the word bond. Bonds maturity is for more than 1 year. So long-term bonds will be issued to the RBI by the government. and again that bond, RBI will be printing the notes. Okay, this will be called fresh issue of currency. Okay, this will be called high powered money, and that money will be given as loan by the RBI to the government to meet the expenditure. So that money, when it is spent by the government, is going to come into the market. So money supply will increase. अभी तक तो सेम है, ठीक है. But if in the long term, okay, or later on, if RBI realizes that because of this excess money supply, inflationary pressure is very high, so what RBI can do in the open market operation, same bond means those bonds which were issued by the government to the RBI, the same bond will be sold by the RBI to the people of India. And when people of India, they buy the same bond, it means squeezing out of money from the economy. So money supply will be taken back by the RBI, and yes, inflationary pressure can be checked. So methodology is definitely going to be different. Okay, but the bond or maybe bill is going to be the basis of printing the notes. Okay, so let us see now. The two we have discussed, borrowing from RBI and second, borrowing from the market. Now come to the third one, using public account money. In most of books you can see that public borrowing is clubbed with borrowing from the market up to some extent, correct hai? But let us discuss now, difference are there. When you discuss or when you go through paper like polity, you must be knowing the government of India is making or maintaining three funds. First is called consolidated fund. Second is called contingency fund, and third is called public account. From here questions are always coming. Now consolidated fund, it is the main fund. It is the main fund of the government, okay, where proceeds from all the receipts are kept, okay, from taxation, non-taxes, borrowings. Okay, so this is the main fund of the government, where all the proceeds of the government, they are kept except for one. That is called proceeds from disinvestment. Proceeds from disinvestment is kept separately, okay, in a separate fund that is called NIF, National Investment Fund. That is called National Investment Fund. So why proceeds from disinvestment? Again, National Investment Fund. So National Investment Fund is inclusive of all the proceeds from disinvestment. So why proceeds from disinvestment? They are kept separately. So this I will discuss while discussing disinvestment. Anyway, so consolidated fund, it is the main fund of the government. Okay, and before a single rupee can be spent from that, okay, yes, prior approval of parliament is needed. Okay, you can see budget is presented on the 1st of February, and budget is for the next month. Next year means starting from 1st of April. So in the budget speech, finance minister makes some announcement, okay, for this scheme, this much money it is going to give. Okay, but the question is, who is finance minister alone, okay, to declare the term? It's a democracy. Okay, so it is mere proposal. So he has made the announcement, but it will have to be authorized by the parliament. Then you can see in the parliament, budget session is going to take place, and in the budget session, things are discussed, and then budget has to be passed to the parliament. So if budget has been passed to the parliament, it means parliament has authorized the government to use money lying in the consolidated fund. Okay, so this is it. So consolidated fund, yes, okay, it is the main fund. And before a single rupee can be spent from that fund, prior approval of parliament is needed. Now come to contingency fund. Okay, as the name suggests, okay, this money will be used in case of contingency only. Okay, but keeping in mind the size of the country, yes, size of contingency fund is a very, very small. It's only of rupees 500 crores. Only of rupees 500 crore. It's too small. So it's a mere formality. Okay. And yes, okay, apply your common sense. Okay. No need, okay, to take permission from parliament. So this fund basically, the size of this fund should be bigger. But that is not the case. Now come to the third one. Third one is called public account money. Public account money. Okay, as the name suggests, money lying in that account. Okay, although it is with the government, but that money does not belong to the government. It belongs to the people of India, okay, like you and me. And yes, these money, they are coming under social security scheme like Provident Fund and etc. Okay. Okay, here our money is deposited with the government. Yes, they are coming under retirement cum death benefits. One of the best example is Provident Fund, a small saving. Government basically here it is working as trustee. Working as trustee. PF role you must be knowing. Okay, कि employee and employer both are contributing equally. Okay, normally the rate is 12%. Okay, in rare cases 10%. So if you are working okay, somewhere and if your employer is coming under the PF Act, Provident Fund Act of 1952, yes, the employer is going to okay, make a deduction on account of PF. I said whether it's a public sector or the private sector. If the number of employees, remember, if the number of employees working in that sector during the year at any point of time is touching 20, PF Act becomes or compulsory. And then the PF obligation there. So 12% deduction will be made by the employer and same amount will be contributed by employer from its own pocket and the entire money will be deposited with the bank. Okay, so PF money, equal contribution has to come from employer. Let us see some examples. Suppose your monthly income is 3,000. Okay. So once you work for 1 month, your 3,000 salary will become due, but employer is not going to give you entire 3,000. Since your employer is coming under PF Act, the employer is going to make 12% deduction. In rare case, 10%. Okay. Yes, so 12% means 360 rupees. So you will be paid, okay, 3,000 less 360. Now the same contribution 360 rupees has to come from employer side. Okay, and this 720 rupees will be deposited with your PF account. Okay, and this has to be done on monthly basis. So in India, all the people working with the government sector, whether state government employees or central government employees, all they are coming under PF Act. And in India, private sectors also in the recent time they have grown up. So altogether in India, in between 6 to 7 crores of people are there, okay, who are coming under, who are the members of Provident Fund, and their money is deducted as well as deposited. So okay, that PF money, some massive money, is deposited with bank, okay, but via bank cannot use that money. That money is immediately transferred to the public account of the government. Okay, and yes, it is your basically budhape ki lathi. Okay, so that money should be kept with the safest hand, and okay, no one is more safe. Okay, nowhere your money is more safe than the government. So that money will go to public account. Again, coming to the same question, money lying with the public account, they don't belong to the government. Okay, they belong to we people. It's ours money. Okay, coming under a small saving, coming under retirement cum death benefit scheme. Okay, so money lying in the public account, final line, that money does not belong to the government. It belongs to the common people of India. Now the question is, our government is facing the problem of deficit. You can see sometime borrowing from RBI, sometime borrowing from market. The question is, can government use money lying in the public account? Remember, that money does not belong to the government. Okay. So yes, government can use that money lying in the public account. And remember, this question came 2 years ago. Even to use the money lying with the public account, no approval of parliament is needed. Okay. So suppose government has taken out 100 rupee from that public account. So it is also in the nature of borrowing. Again from the public because it's our money. But government is authorized by the constitution to use the money lying with in the public account. So since government is using money lying in the public account, so who will give the interest? So definitely government. And that's why central government is giving interest on PF. Okay. Now rate of PF, Provident Fund, is decided by Ministry of Labour. 2 years ago, since our accounting year begins from 1st of April, so in the month of January, maybe February, Ministry of Labour was making the announcement regarding the rate of interest for the next year. So it was done earlier on annual basis, but from the last 2 years, interest on PF is declared 4 times. It means on quarterly basis. Okay. So using money account, using basically money lying with the public account, government can meet the expenditure. Okay. And since it is in the nature of borrowing, and that too borrowing from the public is our money, So that's why many books and many teachers, this borrowing from the using public account money, they are clubbed with market borrowing. Okay, they are up to some extent they are correct. Okay, so three things we have discussed under borrowing. First is borrowing from RBI. Second is market borrowing, and third is using public account money. Okay, I hope that you people are totally comfortable. You people are totally comfortable. Okay, now come to this year's budget. This year's budget, before we can move to the next topic, that is called disinvestment. This year's budget, rupee comes from and rupee goes to. So budget, suppose total expenditure is rupee 1. So from where it is going to finance? The contribution of tax is only going to be 64 paise. Non-tax, it will be 10 paise. The government is able to finance only 74% from its own income. Now the remaining 26 paise, the contribution of market borrowing is going to be 20 paise. See, 20% paise means 20% contribution is coming from borrowing. This is the figure reflected through the budget. But after budget was presented for the last 3 months, what we can see? The government's revenue, this revenue has fallen achieved. Let me first write. So from where the remaining 6 paise will come? So that is called disinvestment and plus recovery of loan. These two I will discuss later on. Recovery of loan. Recovery of loan is a very negligible. So these two are called non-debt capital receipts. So their contribution will be rupees 6 paise. So this is the breakup of this budget. Rupee goes to the government's total budget in rupees term is 32 lakh crores approximately. So from where that expenditure will be financed? So this has been expressed using 1 rupee. Mathematics, is feature. The same thing can be presented in many ways in terms of 1 rupee, in terms of percentage, XYZ. So this is the total expenditure, 1 rupee, or you can say 100 paise. So from where money will come? See, tax versus non-tax, 74 paise. And remaining 26 paise will come from other sources. And here the contribution of borrowing is 20 paise, already 20 paise. But what we can see for the last 3 months, the government's tax and non-tax revenue, they have fallen drastically. It means, and moreover, this expenditure is likely to be more. As a result, government's borrowing is going to be more. Earlier, the budget target is 7,96,000 crore, approximately 8 lakh crore, and already it has been targeted. It will go beyond 12 lakh crore. And when the accounting is over, the actual figure may be very, very high. So things are not looking good for the government. Anyway, these things I will discuss. And then, but here comes to now the second one and the overall, the fourth one, disinvestment. Disinvestment. Right now we are discussing the deficits of the government. From where government is going to finance the deficit, because our government is facing the problem of deficit. So broadly there are 2 options, borrowing and disinvestment. Under borrowing there are 3, those 3 we have discussed, and now we are coming to disinvestment. Fourth and the last. Now disinvestment, it is a new thing. And the concept of disinvestment came after new economic policy of 1991. What is the meaning of the word disinvestment? Now, disinvestment is just opposite of the word investment. When you invest the money, you create asset. Reverse process. Disinvestment means taking your investment back. It means for that you will have to sell the asset. So government decided to generate revenue, resources through sale of its assets. So what can be, or what are the assets of the government that can be sold? So every asset of the government cannot be sold. The only option is disinvestment of PSU. Public sector undertaking. Now PSUs, they are very big in size. Central PSU, state PSU, I am concerned with central government's PSU. So PSUs in India, they are approximately just below 300 in numbers, and they are very big. So sale of asset, sale of PSU, public sector undertaking, fine. But PSU, can they be called asset? Are they assets for the government? Let me now discuss exactly or technically meaning of the word asset. Okay. Assets normally we people mean something that is tangible. Okay. That is not completely correct. Okay. Financial assets also the other thing. Now regarding assets, assets they do have the feature. Remember and be careful. Assets they have an inherent feature to generate income for you. Anything that is capable of generating income for you will be called asset. Okay, your building, that is your asset. Moreover, if you have purchased shares of some company, is it your asset? Here you are not getting any tangible thing, but it is also your asset because here it is going to generate income for you in the name of dividend. If you buy debentures, debentures are issued by the companies and they are also in the nature of debt. If you buy debentures, maybe bond, it is also your investment, but can they be called your asset? Yes. Reason being, here you are going to generate income in the name of interest. If you go for fixed deposit, do you think your fixed deposit will be your asset? Yes, because it is going to generate income. If you take loan, from someone, it is your liability because you have to return the money along with interest. But if you give loan to someone, can they be called your asset? Yes, they are also your asset because here you are going to generate income for you. See the case of bank. Banks are giving loan to the people. So loans given by the bank, can it be called asset for the bank? Yes, reason being, because on that loan, it is going to generate income, again interest. And you can see when the loans given by the bank, they are proving bad, then it is called NPA, non-performing asset. Non-performing asset. So PSUs, why they are assets? Reason being, PSUs they are owned and managed by the government. In fact, government is doing business. And if PSUs are in profit, who will have this profit? So definitely government being the owner. So dividend, if the PSUs are in profit, a part of profit will be distributed or given as dividend to the government. And yes, that dividend is coming under non-tax revenue. That is coming under non-tax revenue. Since PSUs are very big, they are able to generate big revenue to the government. And since it is coming under non-tax revenue, it is not in the nature of borrowing. It's very good. But the problem is PSUs are of two types: profit-making PSUs and loss-making PSUs. Regarding profit-making PSUs, yes, they are able to generate income to the government. But what about loss-making PSUs? Here there is no question of generating income to the government. In fact, government has to contribute from its own pocket. Should they also be called asset or better to call them liability? You can say they are the liabilities. But that is not correct. See, although they have become a liability, but by nature, they are asset. By nature, they are never the liability. Those things which are by nature liability, they are always going to be liability. But can the loss-making PSU be converted into asset? Yes. If the private sector, they can convert loss-making companies into profit, why not the government? Now, if you take loan, suppose loans are taken, so by nature it is your liability and it will be your liability till they are paid off. But the PSUs which are in losses, they cannot be called the liability by nature. They have proved to be a liability. So better to use the word assets turning into liability. So government decided to go for disinvestment. And initially, during the early 90s, a separate ministry was created, disinvestment ministry. And when you create a ministry, you will have to appoint minister. So disinvestment minister, first and the last, it was Arun Shourie. Now, initially, disinvestment could not get the momentum. But since 2012, what we can see, again it got the momentum, and particularly 2014, when this government took over the charge, NDA, disinvestment became very popular, and target for disinvestment, it kept on increasing. Except for the last 2 years. Last year, this year, what will happen, no one knows. Except for the last year, disinvestment, it was too successful. Whatever targets were set, actual realization, it was more than that. Moreover, but in the last year, 2019-20, 2,000. See the trend for the last few years. Earlier it was 52,000, then increased to 72,000. Then you can see 80,000. Last year I am concerned with 2019 and 20. 2019 to 20. Target set was 1,05,000 crore. It's a big amount. It means through disinvestment, government will generate 1,05,000 crore. Okay. Later on, okay, the target was reduced to 65,000 crore. 65,000 crore. Okay. It was a big setback for the government, okay, because disinvestment, okay, up to some extent, okay, could not get the momentum. But when the last report came, after accounting is over, okay, the actual realization was hardly 50,298 crores. Okay. See what we can see. It's a less than the 50% of the budgeted figure. Okay. So last year, the target set was 1,05,000 crore, but by then we saw that, okay, actual realization from disinvestment, it was less than 50%. Now this current year, 2020-21, okay, this I will discuss under budget. Okay, the target set is 2,10,000 crores. Okay, it's almost double. In fact, exactly double. And you know COVID-19. I don't think, okay, this figure is going to be get. So these things I will discuss later on. Come to this, okay, disinvestment. So government decided to sell the shares. Sell the shares, okay. But question is who will buy? Question is who will buy? One more thing, okay. There are two types of PSUs, profit making and loss making. Okay. So which companies disinvestment will be there? Profit making PSU or loss making PSU? So most of the people say loss making. That is wrong. Okay. Government is always going for this investment, selling a part of PSU. Okay. Those PSUs who are in profit. Reason is, who will buy? You know, profit and loss both belongs to the owner. Who will buy shares of loss making PSU? And moreover, if the loss making PSUs, okay, they are being sold, the rate and the prices, okay, they are going to be very, very low. It means despite selling a big shares of a PSU, government won't be generating, okay, enough revenue. So, okay, the reality is, whatever disinvestments they have taken place or they are taking place, mostly of those PSUs which are in profit. Okay. Okay. Air India is a separate case. That is not disinvestment, that is privatization. So this I will discuss after some time. Coming to now this. Okay. So most of the PSUs who are in profit, so government decides to sell shares of PSU. But the question is, okay, who will buy? Who will buy? Okay. Because to buy shares of PSU, see PSU they are big, you need huge money. Let me explain one example. 2012 I hope, or 2016 or 17. Okay. Coal India, okay, big public sector. Government, okay, decided to sell 10% shares of Coal India and to generate 22,600 crores. So in fact, okay, 22,000 crores. Okay, to sell 10% shares of, okay, shares here means, okay, equity shares. Because equity shareholders in a company, they are the real owners because they have, okay, the voting right. Okay. One more share is there, that is called preference share. Okay. Preference shareholders, they are not the real owners because they don't have any voting right. So it means in the decision making, they don't have any role to play. So the real owner of the company or, okay, is the equity shareholder. Okay. So 10% shares of Coal India, okay, 10% shares were offered and the target was to collect or generate 22,000 crores. See, it means 22,000 crores is a big amount. To buy 10% shares of Coal India, okay, you need 22,000 crores. Okay. Are you financially able? No. Who will buy? Okay. We people in our individual capacity cannot buy, okay, or cannot buy 10% shares of Coal India. Then you will say the private sectors. Private sector? Okay, big corporate sectors in India over the years, they have grown up and they have financially become very, very powerful. But the problem is, okay, big corporate sectors of India, they won't buy, okay, till they are offered at least 51% share. I repeat again, private sectors, big corporate sectors of India, they are capable financially, okay, but they won't buy, okay, shares of PSU here in this case till they are offered 51% shares. what will happen then? If suppose I am asking for you, okay, if you are offered 10% shares and you have to pay 22,000 crore, even you buy 40% shares of this company. So to buy 40% share, you need approximately 90,000 crores rupees. So your ownership will be 40%, but the 60% ownership will be in the hands of the government. It means in the decision making process, okay, who will dominate? The government, because of the major shareholder 60%. Okay. And despite spending or investing 90,000 crore, you won't have any role in management. Okay. And 90,000 crores rupees is a big amount. It's a big amount. Okay. And yes, okay, it's a big amount. It's basically, if you have got this much of money, why to buy shares of PSU? You can set up your own business, or you can go for some new venture. Okay. So this is the problem. And what I have seen, in India, government is going for disinvestment, selling the shares of PSU in between 8 to 10%. 8 to 10%. Okay. So big corporate sectors of India, they won't participate till they are offered, okay, 51%. Because once 51% shares are offered, definitely you will buy. Because in that case, you will become the major shareholder. In the decision-making process, you are going to dominate. And then what will happen? Management will be transferred from the government into the hands of you people. Okay. See the question. Corporate sectors of India, okay, private sectors, okay, they are financially very capable. So they won't buy till they are offered 51% share. Okay. So they will buy. Okay. Suppose government is offering them 51% share. Okay. So in this case, do you think they will buy? Yes. Okay. So in that case, they will buy. And once you buy 51%, it means you become the major shareholder. And yes, in the decision-making process, you are going to dominate. And then what will happen? Being the major shareholder, management will be transferred from the public sector to the private sector, and then it will be called privatization. It will be called privatization. Now, disinvestment and privatization, okay, basically these two words, they overlap. They overlap. Okay, and this is the problem, okay, with the UPSC. Okay, those questions are normally asked where lots of confusion there. Okay, so private sectors of India, they won't buy till they are offered 51% share, and government is in no mood to offer them 51% share. Because if government is offering them or selling them 51% share, then the government will be in question. Okay, then what is the need of, okay, keeping the remaining 49% share? Okay, this is the problem our government is facing. Okay. So now the biggest question is, okay, private sectors of India, disinvestment, selling the shares of PSU. And yes, to buy the shares of PSU, you need, okay, big money. This example I have given you. Okay. So private sectors of India, they won't buy till they are offered, okay, 51% share. If this is the case, they will buy, then it will be, disinvestment will be converted into privatization and management will be transferred. So you will not buy, private sector, they won't buy till they are offered 51% share, and the government cannot sell. The government is in no mood to offer them for 51% share. Because if the government is offering them 51% share, then they will be under question. Then what is the rationale behind keeping the remaining 49? Okay. So then what to do? Because government is going for disinvestment in between 8 to 10%. 8 to 10%. Then these 8 to 10% shares, they are offered to the common people. Question remaining the same. Who will buy? Okay. So then 10% shares of this PSU, if it is the case, it will be listed with the share market, stock exchange, and from there it will be available, okay, to everyone. So here people of India, okay, like we people, we can also buy. Okay. Anyone can buy from there. And people of India, when collectively they join the hands, okay, they can contribute heavily. They can contribute heavily. And yes, we people of India, in our individual capacity, neither we are capable, okay, nor we are interested in buying 10% shares of PSU. Okay. So when government goes for issue of shares in between 8 to 10%, okay, these shares are listed with the share market, and from where, okay, it is being traded. Okay. Sale purchase is taking place. How share market performs. So these things I will discuss when I discuss the world economy later on. Okay. 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 So this in disinvestment, okay, you got the point? Disinvestment and privatization. Okay. Difference is clear. Okay. Things should not overlap. Okay. Now to solve these problems, okay, one concept has come. Normally, it is believed that private sector people they are more efficient than the public sector. Okay, I may be wrong, okay, but that is not the case. I may be correct as well. Okay, if the public sector is being run by efficient people, efficient means non-sarkari people, private people, private sector. So then loss-making companies can be converted into profit-making. Those PSUs which are already in profit, their profitability can also increase, and as a result, government's revenue will increase, putting government at a comfortable condition or position, you can say. And that's why participation of private sector, corporate sector of India, that is needed in case of disinvestment. And that's why a new concept came that is called a strategic disinvestment. That is called a strategic disinvestment. Okay. So now let us start the concept of a strategic disinvestment. Whatever we have discussed till now, it is called general or regular disinvestment. So disinvestment, they are of two types, general or regular, and second is called strategic. So let us now start strategic. After that, we will compare and give the conclusion.